Welcome to the Wife Stories YouTube channel. New video every day, and don't forget to subscribe. Here we go.
I woke up with the feeling I wasn't alone. My left hand was curled into a fist, pressing a crumpled piece of paper so tightly that my knuckles hurt. A morning haze blurred the edges of the bedroom. The dresser by the wall, the half-open closet door, the muted shape of a suitcase. For a moment, I couldn't recall how I ended up with that note in my hand. Then the memory hit me, like a punch in the gut. It was the letter from Trevor. "For you, my hero," written in casual, almost carefree handwriting. That line had been burning through my head all night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those words. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, trying not to breathe too loudly. The sheets still carried the faint scent of her perfume, that bright floral note that had once been a comfort. Now it felt like a slap in the face. My eyes drifted to her side of the bed. It was empty. Her pillow was fluffed up neatly, like she hadn't slept there at all. The realization made my stomach clench. If she was gone, it meant she had left earlier than usual, or she never came to bed after she got home from wherever she'd been last night. I squeezed my hand around the letter once more, felt the paper edges pressing into my skin, then forced myself upright. I swung my legs over the side of the mattress and planted my feet on the floor. My head throbbed. The bitterness in my mouth was overwhelming, as though I'd swallowed a half-gallon of regret and now had to taste it. A single thought kept circling. This is real. It's not some nightmare I can blink away. I didn't even bother to check my phone for messages. I knew there were none. She'd stopped sending me any real communication weeks ago, replaced sincerity with quick, polite texts. Working late. Don't wait up. Meeting for charity fundraiser. The excuses had multiplied until I couldn't tell which were real and which were lies. Maybe all of them were true. Maybe none were. I had no clue anymore. I dragged myself to the bathroom, took a cold shower to snap out of the daze. Water sluiced over my shoulders, but it didn't wash away the tension locked in my chest. The crumpled paper, I laid it on the bathroom counter, watching the condensation on the mirror gathered like little droplets of sweat. Trevor's note. My teeth clenched. I turned away. I dressed in the half-dark, pulling on the first clothes I found. A pair of jeans, a gray t-shirt, no socks. My bare feet felt the chill of the hardwood floor as I walked through the hallway. The silence in the house was thick. It was the kind of silence that made me feel claustrophobic, as if the walls themselves held their breath to see what I'd do next. In the kitchen, I found the box she had left yesterday, on the passenger seat of our car, as if I wouldn't notice it. Then again on the table now, as though she was taunting me. My eyes flicked to the window above the sink. The early sun was already glaring over the rooftops outside. A new day had begun, but I felt only the weight of the last one. I approached the box, that plain cardboard container with a neat red ribbon. Inside it was nothing but sugary confections, caramels. They smelled sweet, almost enticing. I discovered a small card beneath them, scrawled with Trevor's greeting to her. She must have seen me notice. She had to know I rated. But she acted oblivious, going through the motions, giving me a peck on the cheek, calmly continuing her day as though nothing was amiss. That was last night. And now here I was, rummaging through the same box, half wanting to smash it to pieces, half wanting to fling it at the wall. Instead, I did nothing. My hands shook a little, but I just closed the box and stared at the table. I felt the anger claw at the base of my skull, jabbing me with images. Her in a hotel room, a towel around her body, standing too close to that man, Trevor. His strong arms, that damned fireman's uniform. The cocky grin I had glimpsed once at some local volunteer event. I'd never suspected anything more. Now I cursed my own stupidity. 3 weeks. I'd known for 3 weeks, and I'd said nothing, done nothing, just observed her movements, her patterns. I'd pretended to believe her stories about official gatherings and late-night planning sessions for the city ceremony. Part of me wanted to catch her in the act, to see the truth with my own eyes, although it would tear me apart. Another part of me, well, I guess it was the part that still hoped it was a misunderstanding, or maybe a casual flirtation that never went anywhere real. But that note had spelled it out. For you, my hero. She called him a hero. The sweet smell of betrayal reeked of caramel, now impossible to ignore. My hand clenched again, forming that fist. I was done ignoring it. I started writing a letter of my own the night before, just the raw outline. Because when I looked at her, I wanted to say so many things. I wanted to scream, to demand answers, to hurt her like she was hurting me. But the words got stuck in my throat. So I did what I do best. I wrote it down. Rereading my own sentences felt like poking at an open wound, but at least it was something tangible. The letter was short, direct. And this morning, with the house still empty, I finished it. Every line demanded to be sharper, cutting through any illusions we might have clung to. I found out. I know. This is what your choice means. No more sugarcoating. I rehearsed reading it aloud. In my head, my voice trembled at first, then gained a brittle strength. My jaw tightened as I forced each phrase into place. This would be my proof that I wasn't the fool she took me for. Then I realized something. This letter was more than a confrontation. It was a final statement of my intentions. Because soon, very soon, she'd go on stage for her big city event as Woman of the Year. And I knew exactly how to dismantle that perfect public image. By the time I heard her footsteps at the front door, I'd folded the paper. I tucked it into my back pocket and steadied myself against the counter. I didn't want to fight. Well, I did, but not yet. Not until I was fully prepared to tear down the facade she'd built. Her key turned in the lock. She stepped inside, wearing a dark blue blazer and a matching pencil skirt, looking more like a politician's wife than the woman I once knew. She set her handbag on the side table. For a moment, she hesitated in the doorway of the kitchen, meeting my gaze with that forced casualness. "Good morning," she said. I swallowed, forced a nod. "Morning." I noticed she was wearing the fragrance I used to love. Fresh, with a hint of citrus. Now, it only reminded me of stale promises. We stood there, neither of us moving or speaking further. The tension was so thick I thought I might choke on it. She looked at the box on the table, then at me, and asked, "Something on your mind?" An absurd question. I wanted to say 1,000 things. Instead, I said nothing. I let the silence speak. She took a step forward, but my body went rigid. She stopped. "Michael." She tried again, her tone sharper. "I have a big day ahead. Could we not do this now?" "Sure," I said flatly. "Let's save it for later." She exhaled, relief or frustration. I couldn't tell. Then she turned and walked to the bedroom to change. The click of her heels on the floorboards trailed after her. I stared at the empty doorway for a long moment. My mind raced. Part of me wanted to whip out the letter, read it to her right then and there. But I remembered my plan. The night before, I'd done more than just scribble words on a page. I'd also made a certain modification to her upcoming speech. And it felt good. That feeling carried me through the next few hours like a buoy in a violent sea. I drove to the auditorium early. I told her I was heading out for errands. She didn't ask further. I parked in the lot behind the venue, found a side entrance, and slipped inside with surprising ease. The backstage area was a tangle of wires, folding chairs, half-built sets for the upcoming city festival. I navigated my way to the control booth for the digital presentations. The file for her talk was easy to spot. Woman _of_the _year _speech.px. Predictable. I inserted my own version. The real content of her speech was still there. The bullet points, the uplifting phrases. But I'd added a slide. Just one. A photograph from the hotel. Her in a towel, Trevor's uniform pants slung low on his hips, and a ridiculous fireman's cap perched on his head. They were both grinning. "For you, my hero," read the text, matching the card's message. I saved it. My heart hammered so loud I could hear my own pulse. Walking out of that control booth, my fingers trembled. I knew there was no going back. She would stand at the podium to accept her award, to talk about community values and personal integrity. Then the lights would dim for the visual, and everyone would see a public unveiling of the betrayal she'd inflicted on me in private. I wasn't proud. A part of me screamed that I was better than this. But a darker part, the part reeling from the ache of betrayal, wanted her to taste the same humiliation I was tasting. Maybe that made me petty. Maybe it made me weak. In that moment, I didn't care. I just wanted to see her perfect composure crack. I left the auditorium quickly, feeling as though the walls had eyes, as if someone would leap out and accuse me of sabotage. But it was quiet. Outside, a fresh gust of wind made me shiver. I walked to my car, fumbled with the keys, trying to steady my breathing. The city felt strangely indifferent this morning, the busy streets continuing their routine, while I quietly set in motion something irreversible. I sat in the driver's seat, leaning my head against the steering wheel. A wave of nausea washed over me. For a moment, I wondered if I'd taken things too far. But then an image flashed behind my eyes. Her phone on silent at midnight, my calls unanswered, the note from Trevor, the hotel photo. I shut my eyes, clenched my teeth, and felt that anger burn hot again. No, it was time. Time to act. I drove back home and waited. I didn't even remember if I ate lunch. My mind flicked between the letter in my pocket and the images on that projector screen. The hours passed in a slow crawl. Finally, she came home, her expression tense and focused. She was rehearsing, reciting lines under her breath, pacing around the living room as if I didn't exist. I placed a hand on her shoulder to pretend I was supportive. She gave me a thin, distracted smile and continued speaking to an imaginary audience. I nodded in mock encouragement, carefully controlling my face. A swirl of contradictory emotions swamped my gut. Evening arrived. She left to attend a pre-event gathering. I followed a bit later. By the time I entered the auditorium, people were trickling in. City council members, local dignitaries, a smattering of curious residents. Woman of the Year, that's what they were calling her. The press snapped photos by the entrance. I slipped into the third row, unobtrusive, silent. Lights dimmed slowly. The chatter of the crowd lulled. On stage, the host gave a florid introduction. Then she, my wife, stepped out. Polite applause. She was poised, confident, shoulders squared. She began speaking. I stared at her silhouette, my heart pounding with some wretched mix of dread and anticipation. She began her polished lines about dedication, community service, the importance of family. Halfway through, the lights lowered to showcase her visual presentation. My lungs squeezed. She carried on, voice unwavering, until the first slides came up. Bullet points, graphs, all the usual. Then, seamlessly, the screen switched to the photo. It was an immediate deafening blow to the entire auditorium's sense of decorum. There was a collective intake of breath, like everyone had been punched in unison. The image was starkly lit, her in that damn towel, wet hair clinging to her neck. Trevor half-dressed in the background. The text at the top read, "For you, my hero." She froze. 1 second, 2 seconds, 3. A hush fell over the audience, thick and bewildered. I watched her face, watched the color drain from her cheeks. She said nothing. Her lips parted slightly, then pressed shut in a firm line. I could almost see the wave of shock rolling through her body. She gripped the folder of her speech so tightly that her knuckles turned white. The silence stretched painfully. Finally, one person coughed. Another whispered. But no one moved. She stared at the screen, at her own betrayal laid bare. Then, with an almost mechanical calm, she turned away from the microphone, stepped off the podium, and walked down the stage steps. No protest, no tearful meltdown, No attempt to explain. She just left. I stood up from my seat, ignoring the stunned faces around me. The hush was so complete that my footsteps on the aisle carpet seemed jarring. Then, in an act of raw defiance or madness, I started clapping. The sound of my applause echoed in the stillness. 1, 2, 3 beats of my hands. Then I let them fall silent. I left the auditorium. Outside, a faint breeze stirred fallen leaves on the sidewalk. The sky had turned a bruised color of twilight. For a moment, I waited, as if expecting her to come storming out, yelling, demanding answers. But there was nothing. Just the hum of distant traffic. I got in my car and drove home. When I walked into the house, it felt wrong to be greeted by the same stale quiet. The weight of what I'd done hung in the air like a storm cloud. I headed straight to the kitchen and found a small box I'd prepared earlier. Inside it, I placed the keys to the house and a note. My note was short. "You're free. Enjoy." Taped to the underside of the lid was an exact copy of Trevor's message. "For you, my hero," just so she'd see it one more time. I left it in plain sight on the table. Then I waited. Minutes ticked by, or maybe hours. I lost track. Eventually, I heard her car pull up in the driveway. Her footsteps approached the front door. She didn't slam it. She opened it quietly, as if hoping not to wake a sleeping child. But there were no children here, just the aftermath of everything we've once built. She walked into the kitchen. I was standing by the counter, arms folded. My letter was in my back pocket, the speech I'd meant to read out loud. The final piece of my vengeance. She paused, her eyes flicking to the box, then to me. "What did you do?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I said nothing. She stepped closer, trembling anger radiating from her. "Goddamn it, Michael," she hissed, though it was almost a plea. "How could you?" "I'm ruined." Her voice cracked on that word. "Everything is ruined." I still didn't speak. I just reached into my back pocket, withdrew the folded paper, and held it up. She looked at it, confusion knitting her brows. Slowly, I unfolded it and began reading. "Emily, this is for you." My voice came out flat. I tried to find words for how I feel, but I realize I have none left. "This note from you to your lover. For you, my hero." I saw it. I smelled the caramel, the sweetness of betrayal. "I watched you pretend for weeks." I said nothing. I've decided that silence is the best language for us now. So let me break that silence just once, to say this. I know who you are. I know what you did. I replaced your speech with the photo so everyone can see your truth. There's nothing more to be said between us. All that's left is your freedom. Enjoy it. She tried to interrupt, but I forged on. If you ever wonder why I had to do this, remember the nights you left me alone, the calls you ignored, the ways you smiled at him. I've lost the ability to pretend we're fine. You believed I was too weak, too clueless to see. You were wrong. Now everyone sees. Take the house keys. Take all you want. I won't stand in your way. I'm finished wondering, what if? I'm finished with doubts. This is final. Goodbye. I stopped reading. My hand shook slightly. I refolded the letter and tossed it onto the table next to the box. She stared at me, tears forming in her eyes, but her face set in a mask of fury. She opened her mouth, then closed it. Finally, she asked, "Why did you have to humiliate me like that?" I let the silence return, turning away from her. My chest felt painfully tight. "Because it hurt," I wanted to say. "Because you destroyed everything, and I had to destroy you in return." But those words stayed locked behind my lips. Instead, I stepped out of the kitchen, leaving her alone with the box and the note. I walked to the living room, found myself gazing out the window at the darkening sky. In a few minutes, I heard her footsteps behind me. She stood there, maybe a yard away, breathing raggedly. I could almost feel the anger rolling off her. "Are you just going to stand there?" she whispered. I nodded, still not speaking. My fists were clenched at my sides. 1,000 swirling emotions battered me, but I held them in. This silent venom was all I had left. She took a shaky breath, then said, "Fine." I heard her footsteps retreat. A moment later, the front door slammed shut. A car engine roared to life outside, and she was gone. My mind barely registered the final echo of that sound. I stayed in the living room for a long while, not moving. Eventually, the house lights felt too bright, or maybe too hollow, so I turned them off. Darkness wrapped around me, thick and suffocating. All I could hear was my own heartbeat. Then, slowly, as if guided by some faint instinct, I walked to the bedroom, rummaged in the closet, and grabbed an overnight bag. I stuffed in a couple changes of clothes, a toothbrush, my laptop, and that letter I'd written. Its job was done, but I felt compelled to keep it, like a scar I needed to carry. I left the house, locked the door behind me out of habit, then realized I'd given her the keys. It didn't matter. I tossed the lock key aside into the bushes. The world outside was quiet, only the hush of distant cars on the main road. I climbed into my car and drove. I drove aimlessly at first, letting the swirl of neon signs and passing headlights lull me into a mechanical focus. Nighttime in this city can be both comforting and harsh, the roads weaving through silent suburban streets, and then opening into pockets of lively bars or restaurants. None of that mattered to me tonight. I felt unmoored, as if the last anchor in my life had been cut away. But it was a deliberate cut. My cut. Eventually, I found myself on a quiet stretch near the river. I pulled over, parked, and got out. The air was cool, a faint breeze drifted off the water. I walked across an old footbridge. The reflection of streetlights in the rippling water had a hypnotic pull. For the first time in weeks, I felt the tension in my chest loosen. Just a little. The deed was done. No more lies, no more illusions. I remembered a time in my childhood when my father took me fishing. The smell of the river, the quiet conversation, the sense of peace. It felt like an eternity ago. A life belonging to someone else. Right now, I only felt the sting of fresh scars, but an odd sense of relief pulsed beneath the pain. She had cut me open, but maybe I was pulling the shards out now. Maybe that was the only way to heal. Standing on that bridge, I thought of Trevor, how he would respond to the public scandal. I wondered if she'd go to him tonight, sobbing or blaming me, or begging him for comfort. The thought made me nauseous. My jaw set. Let them have each other. Let them deal with the fallout. I was done being the accommodating fool. I leaned on the rusted railing, listening to the water trickle against the concrete supports. A passing car's headlights flashed across my face, then vanished into the night. I could still feel the letter's words reverberating in my skull. Now everyone sees. That was my final verdict. My mind replayed the moment the slide appeared on screen, the hushed gasp from the crowd, her expression, the folder trembling in her white-knuckled hands. Could I have stopped at some lesser vengeance? Probably. But in that second, punishing her publicly felt like the only thing that would match the intensity of my anger. An hour might have passed, maybe two. Eventually, I climbed back into my car and booked a cheap motel room near the outskirts of the city. The manager barely looked up from his TV show as he handed me the key. The air inside the room was stale, a cheap detergent smell mixed with something else. I dropped my bag on the bed and turned on the lamp. The walls had peeling wallpaper. The carpet was a dull brown. It was the kind of place people stayed for a night when they wanted to disappear. I sat on the edge of the bed, elbows on my knees, staring at the flickering light. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out. A single text from her. Why? I read it once, then again, searching for any undertone beyond that single word. There was none. No, I'm sorry. No, let's talk. No, how could you? Just, why? I turned the phone face down on the nightstand without answering. Maybe eventually I'd muster some explanation, or maybe not. Right now, I couldn't do it. At some point, exhaustion swept over me. I lay back on the bed, shoes still on, letting my eyes drift shut. I wanted the darkness behind my eyelids to swallow me, to let me forget everything for a few hours. But as soon as I started to doze, the images came rushing back. The smell of caramel, her quiet moans in that hotel room I'd overheard by accident, the soft, breathless laugh she'd never given me. I clenched my fists. Sleep teased me, then receded, leaving me more awake than ever. I reached for my laptop. Maybe some distraction, work emails, random browsing, would keep my mind busy. Then I remembered the pictures. I had them saved in a hidden folder. I opened it, stared at the set of photos. They were explicit enough. Her standing by the bed, wearing only a towel, Trevor behind her, pressing kisses to her shoulder. The timestamp from the hotel's security camera footage had made me want to vomit. Part of me had needed to see them, to confirm that I wasn't imagining things. Now, looking at them felt like I was punishing myself all over again. With a trembling hand, I closed the folder. I shut the laptop and threw it aside. Sleep, I told myself. Just sleep. When morning came, the motel's dim light seeped through the worn curtains. I woke up feeling brittle and hollow, as if all the adrenaline from last night had drained me. My phone showed a few missed calls, her number and one unknown. I left them unanswered. I got in the shower, letting the lukewarm water run over my stiff shoulders. My brain was already cycling through possible next steps. Should I call a lawyer? Should I transfer money out of our joint account? Should I rent an apartment, or go back to the house, or simply vanish for a few days? I didn't have answers, and I wasn't ready to puzzle them out. All I knew was that I couldn't keep living in the same space as her, not after what happened. The motel's meager offering of a free continental breakfast was unappealing. Stale muffins, watery orange juice. I forced down a cup of coffee, letting the bitterness jolt me awake. Then I walked outside into the cold morning air. The sky was overcast, threatening rain. The parking lot was almost empty. I felt alone in every sense. Halfway to my car, my phone buzzed again. I pulled it out, heart pounding. Another text from her. I'm coming over to talk. Where are you? She must have realized I didn't stay in the house. I stared at the words, debating if I should respond or just let her guess. Eventually, I typed, "Don't. I'm not home." Then I clicked send. Seconds later, her reply, "We need to talk. Face to face." I let that sit. My anger flared. Talk. She wanted to talk now. After ignoring me, lying to me, messing around with Trevor in some cheap or maybe not so cheap hotel. After humiliating me behind my back, she was upset I humiliated her publicly. The irony burned. I texted back, "I gave you your freedom. Enjoy it." No response came. For a moment, I felt a pang in my chest. Memories of better times tried to resurface. Dinners, vacations, quiet moments of laughter in bed. But those memories felt distant, like a story told to me about someone else's life. I got into my car and started driving without a clear destination. The roads took me downtown, weaving through the city traffic. On an impulse, I headed toward the office building where I used to do most of my PR work. Maybe routine would help me stay sane, keep me from drowning in this personal hell. Yet as soon as I parked, I realized I had no actual reason to be there. I wasn't in the mood to face acquaintances or deliver half-hearted greetings about how's life. So I sat in my car for a while, engine off, watching people bustle by on the sidewalk. Suits and ties, pencil skirts, coffees in hand, briefcases. They all seemed so sure of where they were going and why they were going there. I envied them. My life now felt directionless, propelled only by the momentum of betrayal. The next few days were a blur. I camped out in that motel, took drives to random corners of the city, tried to put up a wall of numbness around myself. She texted me sporadically. Once, she wrote, "I'm sorry, but let's end this civilly. Another time. You ruined my career. I hate you." I never knew which version of her would emerge from behind that phone screen, apologetic or furious. Maybe both. I answered minimally. A yes, a no, a don't contact me, or no answer at all. My mind switched between anger, regret, and a strange emptiness. Meanwhile, the local chatter about the Woman of the Year fiasco was spreading. People whispered about the humiliating photo. Social media accounts posted anonymous rants or inside scoops. I steered clear of it all, though sometimes the news found me. A friend called me, sounding concerned, but I politely brushed him off. I didn't want pity. Eventually, I recognized I couldn't avoid picking up the pieces forever. One morning, after a restless night, I checked out of the motel. I drove to a small apartment complex in a decent neighborhood, knocked on the manager's office door, and inquired about a short-term lease. She showed me a modest one-bedroom. No furniture, just bare walls, and a little kitchen space. It was enough. I signed. That afternoon, I went back to the house, half expecting to find her there. But I arrived to an empty driveway. Stepping inside felt surreal. The echo of my footsteps reminded me of the day we first moved in. I picked up a few essential items: clothes, laptop charger, a couple of keepsakes from my father. The rest I left. I closed the door behind me for what might be the last time. On my way out, I saw that box was gone from the kitchen table, along with the note and the keys. Just an empty spot remained. I let out a small, humorless laugh. The final sign that our shared life was disintegrating. In the apartment, I sat on the floor, no furniture yet, phone in my lap. I stared at it, almost daring it to ring. Part of me wanted her to call, to scream at me, to cry, to do something that would confirm she still cared enough to fight. Another part wanted absolute silence, so I could lick my wounds and vanish. But the phone stayed quiet. Days passed. I busied myself with the new routine of living alone. Bought a second-hand couch, a table, some dishes, cooked bland meals, watched random shows on my laptop, kept expecting an explosion of drama that never came. Once, the doorbell rang, and I opened it to find a delivery guy. He had an envelope for me. No return address. I signed, shut the door, opened it. Inside was a single piece of paper, a divorce agreement, half completed. She'd filled in her details, left the rest for me. There was a short note clipped to it. I'm done fighting. Let's make this clean. I stared at those words. My chest felt tight. Anger, sorrow, and a twisted relief warred within me. I put the documents on the coffee table, grabbed a pen, and signed in the designated places. Then I realized I was shaking again, like an addict going through withdrawal. My entire marriage, my entire sense of security, was being dissolved in black ink on a white page. After I signed, I didn't mail it back right away. I stared at it for a while, trying to see if any last spark of regret or love might stop me from sending it. But the memory of that photograph, her hand on Trevor's shoulder, that intimate familiarity in their pose, burned in my mind. For you, my hero. I sealed the papers in a new envelope, addressed it, and walked it to the nearest mailbox. I dropped it in. I went back to my apartment, sank onto the couch, and found myself smiling. A bitter, weary smile, but a smile nonetheless, because I realized something. In destroying her public image, I'd also destroyed the illusions that had been choking me. I was free now in a way. Yes, I was broken, but from that rubble, I could rebuild. The pain was real, the betrayal was raw, but the path forward was mine. A week later, I got a call from a friend who'd heard rumors that Trevor left the fire station. Something about wanting to move away, to avoid the local scandal. I listened with quiet interest, though I gave no real response. Let him run if he wanted. He was nothing to me. Another friend told me that she, my wife, ex-wife, soon, had vacated the house, possibly to stay with her parents in California. I felt no urge to confirm it. Let her face her new reality. Let her figure out how to pick up the pieces of a ruined reputation. There were moments I almost dialed her number, just to hear her voice. Moments at night when the bed felt too big, and I remembered the warmth of a shared blanket. But I fought those impulses, forced them down. I reminded myself of the raw humiliation, the loneliness, the lies. Each recollection stiffened my resolve. The morning the final divorce decree arrived, I sat in my small kitchen and read it carefully. Then I signed, once more, as the notary required. My reflection in the window caught my eye. There was a hardness there, a set to my jaw I'd never seen before. The man who had walked into that auditorium to sabotage her Woman of the Year acceptance, that man was still part of me now. I wondered if I'd ever fully recognize myself again. At noon, I sent off the final paperwork. Then I made a simple meal, ate in silence, and realized I wasn't trembling anymore. The fear, the anger, yes, they were still there, but they didn't own me. I felt a strange calm, because it was done. Over. Irrevocable. A few days later, I found myself back at that same riverside footbridge. The weather had turned warmer, the sun climbing higher in the sky. I leaned on the railing, listened to the water flowing beneath. Oddly enough, I thought about my father again, about those fishing trips. Then I thought about the future. My future. Just me, alone with my thoughts. But not caged by illusions. A subtle sense of resolve gathered in my chest. She'd broken me. She and Trevor had pushed me into a corner of betrayal so profound, I felt my entire life unravel. In that dark moment, I lashed out. I did something I never imagined I'd do. Publicly exposed her, humiliated her, left her with a short, scathing note. Yet from that brutality, I discovered a new steel in my spine. I survived. I was battered, but standing. I watched a couple on the far side of the bridge, holding hands, whispering quietly. Once, I might have felt a pang of envy. Now I simply gazed at them, acknowledging their closeness without letting it twist a knife in me. My story with her was over. Their story was different. That was life. People betray, people leave. Illusions shatter. But if you can still draw breath, you can stand up again. After a long minute, I pushed off the railing. My footsteps echoed across the old wooden boards, one step after another, heading back toward my car. The sun was warm on my shoulders. I realized I wasn't rushing anymore. I didn't feel that manic drive to do something, prove something, punish someone. The stillness in me now felt almost peaceful. I got in, shut the door, and fired up the engine. My phone sat in the cup holder, silent. There were no new calls from her, no new messages, no urgent demands from old friends or acquaintances. The drama had cooled to embers. Maybe gossip was still swirling somewhere, but I didn't care. As I pulled away from the curb, my thoughts drifted to the note I'd left her, those 4 words. You're free. Enjoy. I snorted, half amused by my own theatrics. It was petty, yes, but it had also been honest. I was giving her freedom from the broken marriage. And I was taking my own freedom. Maybe the cost had been too high. Maybe not. Ultimately, it was done. I drove down the road, merging into traffic. People honked. Brake lights flashed. The city was as alive and chaotic as ever. But inside the car, I felt an odd sense of steadiness. There was no going back to who I was before the betrayal. The taste of revenge. The numbness of heartbreak. They were all part of me now. Yet in that scalding process, I discovered that I could keep going. I might even discover a new version of myself, a stronger one who had stared betrayal in the face and refused to be crushed by it. That was enough. For now, that was enough. I turned on the radio, random talk shows flickering in the background. My mind drifted, the chatter blending into the hum of the engine. And with each passing mile, the memory of her and Trevor slipped a little further behind me, like the receding skyline in the rearview mirror. The future was there, somewhere ahead. For the first time in weeks, I found I could breathe without that tight band of pain constricting my ribs. No illusions left. Only the road, the steady heartbeat of a man who had lost almost everything, and found himself still standing when the dust settled. That was the single truth I carried forward. I was free. And for the first time, I believed it.